Hello everyone, and welcome to the very first video where we will start to understand pandas a lot better. And on this particular video, I will be focusing on the series data structures in pandas. So let's get started. And obviously the first thing that we would do is to import pandas, and that's going to be the library that we will be working with. And after that, what I want to do is I want to show you how to define and how to get started with a series data structure example. So let's work on that. So I'm going to create a series object using this function and okay. So basically this is how you can use the series function from pandas to define a series object. And as I had discussed earlier on with you, series are basically one-dimensional data structures, and they have a lot of functionality which make them very effective for analyzing data and manipulating data. Okay, now let's try to display this particular series that we have created. And one thing to note here is that automatically there are indices which are being assigned, and the default indices are basically integers starting from 0. Okay, similar to how the arrays are defined in Python. Okay, so what we've done is we've created this particular instance of a series which has the grades of 3 students, and what we'll do is now I'll show you how to assess the individual elements of this particular series. Okay, so let's try to do that. And what you can do very easily is you can go to a particular index. For example, the for the index equal to 0, we know that the grades are equal to 87, and you can retrieve the particular elements of that series by using this method. Okay, and another interesting thing to note is that you could very easily do some descriptive statistics on a series. So when you think about a series, you can just think of a independent or a single data column that you're working with. So for this particular series, we could find out what's the minimum value. We could find out what is the maximum value. We could further even count the number of elements in this series. Okay, so there are quite a few things that we could do. You could also work with standard deviations and mean, etc. So these are just some examples of descriptive statistics that you could work on in a series. Okay, now there is another very useful function which basically is called describe, which kind of gives you okay, which gives you the entire list of descriptive statistics following a single command. So this is also something that is very useful. Very often you will see that in this course we will work with data sets with numerical columns, and with describe function you can immediately get the count, essentially how many members are there in that column, what's the mean value, what's the standard deviation, what is the interquartile range, and what is the maximum value. So those are some of the useful things which you could do with a series object. Okay, and let's do something interesting now. Uh, let's try and give custom indices. So let's say there is a particular situation where you want to change the default index to something which is more customized. So let's try to do that. So let's say these names belong to, these are the names of the students who are, to whom these grades belong to. So let's try and add this information to the series object about grade that we had created before. And the way to do it is basically quite easy. What you can do is you can again use the series function where is similar to what we had done before. You have the initial list uh, of marks or grades, and to that I'm adding this second parameter, which is basically the list of indices. Now let's try to display the series again and see what has happened. So as you see here, I did not really have to say series equal to something, because by default, the sequence of the parameters is that the first parameter is essentially the data. So here it's a list of grades. And the second parameter after the comma is basically the indices. So in this case, I wanted to give string indices, which are the names of the students to which those grades belong to, and you can see automatically your series has been updated with that information. Okay, so let's continue to work and understand the series a little bit better. Now let's try to retrieve the series elements using the custom names or the custom indices that we had given. So this is also very similar to what we had done before. So basically what you can do is you can print out the particular element by giving the custom index that you had defined for that particular element. Okay, so this is how you can assess the elements with custom index. Okay, now let's try something different. So far what you saw is an example of creating a series which had numeric elements. But as we had discussed, series basically can contain any kind of information, data of any kind. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a series which has string elements. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, there is a series of hardware equipment, for example. So let's say you're using this series to hold the names of some hardware equipment, and this is an example to see how that will work, and we'll, we'll work with that in a moment. Oh, I forgot though. So this is a list of information which I need to give as a list. Okay, so here we are, and let's try to print this is a series object which has string information under it, and as you can see, the D type or the data type of these strings is represented by using the object type of data type. Okay, and what I want to show further before I end this video is a few more useful functions which can help to manipulate the string elements of a series. Okay, so let's say you want to find out all the elements which have the alphabet A in them. So what you can do is you can call a string method on each element, and you can determine whether that particular element contains the alphabet of interest or not. So let's see how that can be done. So what I'm going to do is I will call the series object, and I'm going to call a string function on that, which is essentially represented by str, and I'm going to check for the containment of a particular alphabet. Here I want to check whether, okay, so what you see is basically something very interesting, and in the resulting series, the data type is bool, which is essentially representing boolean. And how's that the case? You can see that boolean is essentially data type of type true or false, and what this says is that hammer and saw, the first two elements, contain a alphabet in them, and the last one does not, and that's why that's your result. Okay, and we could just try one last operation here, uh, one last operation to try one more string function on this uh, series object, and we will check for what we'll do is basically we will use the upper string function, and that converts the elements of this series into uppercase string elements. Okay, so that's all that I wanted to discuss in this video about series, and hopefully this should give you a pretty good idea about the kind of things that you can do with the series objects from Panda. And talk to you soon in my next video.